Hi, in today's video we're going to look at what we call the four corners benchmark. This is something we ship in X-ray. It's the kind of classic random read, random write, sequential read, sequential write benchmark that most people will do when they get a storage system, just to kind of see what are the outer limits of that platform and what the workloads can do. I think most people understand it doesn't really tell us too much about what our real workload is going to be, but it's useful to know what the outer bounds of the storage system are, and so we include that workload with X-ray. So I went in and selected the four corners benchmark, and I pointed it at my cluster. And so what happens is, just like we saw previously, X-ray deploys VMs and starts provisioning them and begins to run the workload. I've sped up things up here just so it doesn't take so long. So here's the first workload running. This is the random read. It's 8K random read workload. It's running across all nodes in the cluster. As you can see, it takes a little while to warm up. It looks like we're going to hit, I think, in the region of 300,000 or 400,000 IOPS. So that's a cluster-wide number. And what this tells us is, for databases that maybe have a large working set size and need to read a lot of data from disk, these are the amount of IOPS I can get from my system. So it's interesting to know, and this is normally quite a large number on modern hardware because SSDs are so fast. So getting these huge numbers isn't as difficult as it was, maybe 5-10 years ago when we had to get us hard drives to do this many IOPS. So okay, there we go. We've hit about 400,000 IOPS. This is a 4-node cluster, so that's about 100,000 IOPS per node. So I haven't done any tuning on this thing. Maybe I could get more with a little bit of tuning, but nonetheless, that's the number that this particular cluster gives us on this particular day. So yeah, we do a little bit of a wait, and then we move on to the next test. In this case, we're doing a sequential read. Again, interesting to know for particularly kind of analytics type workloads. Unfortunately, in here I haven't scrolled down, so you can't see the actual numbers. But what we'll do at the end of this test is we'll generate a report. And one of the nice things that X-ray does is provide you at the end of the test with a PDF result of all of these tests. Both it just gives you the average IOPS for each section of this test, so the random read, random write, and sequential write. And it gives you a little report, and it will give you a copy of these charts. So you don't really have to worry about sitting in front of the of your browser window whilst this thing happens. So once everything's done, it tears down the cluster and gets it back into a clean state, so you can do whatever you want. So here, if you look at the top right, I'm clicking the Actions button, and I'm going to create the report and show the report on screen. It's a PDF, so it's going to show up in my browser, but I could equally save this off and save it for reference, or send it to my boss or to my colleagues to show what kind of testing I've been doing on this infrastructure. So yeah, it tells you a little bit about the way that the test is run. Okay, so there's the random read IOPS, averaged about 360. Sequential read was 12 gigabytes per second, which is pretty decent. That random IOPS number looks kind of low. What I should say is that I'm running on some kind of new software that we're currently working on, and it's completely untuned. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go off and make a small change to my cluster, and I'm going to rerun this test. And what I'll be able to show you is a way that we can compare these tests. So what I've done is I've changed the flag, I've tuned the software, and I've run another four corners benchmark. So as you can see here, if you look at the bottom, the random write IOPS are way higher than they were before. If you recall, I only got about 67,000 IOPS, which I just knew from experience that was a little bit low. So this is my second run. Everything else looks good. The sequential read looks good. My random write IOPS look good. So it looks like my tuning has helped. What I do want to know though is if by tuning for my random writes, have I impacted anything else? And we'll have a look at the report, and then I'm going to do a compare between my two runs, the untuned and the tuned version, and we'll see what that looks like. Okay, so random writes was down a little bit, and my random writes was definitely higher, so that looks interesting. So let me now go and actually compare those two runs. In X-ray we call this an analysis. It's really just a compare of one or more runs. You can actually do you can compare 3, 4, 5 different ones if you really want to. In this case, I'm just going to compare the two. So I'll click the Create Analysis button. And okay, I know that I'm looking for a four corners test. I want to do the most recent two. So I'll select them. Click Analyze. Okay, here we go. Right, so my random reads were a little bit lower. I'm not sure why that was. Sequential was about the same here. Okay, so in blue, my tuned test is the blue, and I've got way more right high up. So that's good. That's what I expected to happen for my tuning. So in my case, I've tuned the Nutanix system at the back end. You may be looking at different versions or maybe different kind of cluster types, but you can use X-Ray to do this kind of thing very easily, and it keeps the results for you. So I'm adding a note here saying, okay, make this tuning the default because this looks good. So I can keep that on my X-Ray server and come back to it whenever I want and review those notes. So there we are. That's two what we call four corners benchmarks that we did. Made a tuning to the system and then ran it again and was able to use the comparison feature of X-Ray to see what the results were of those tunings, both positive and to make sure I didn't negatively affect anything else. And then I was able to add a little note to the comparison page there so that I can remember what I did. So there we go, that's X-Ray running some micro benchmarks and showing the comparison between the two. Thanks a lot.